The Guardians of the Amazon explained, the Serpent of Fire and the Trickster God. We are often told stories of forgotten cities of gold and legendary beasts. But the true legends of the jungle are not about treasure. They are about balance and the terrible, swift justice that comes to those who would dare to disrupt it. This is a story of two spirits, two guardians, two faces of the same, ancient and vengeful will of the forest. One is a creature of impossible, fiery beauty, a great serpent whose very body is a living flame, a being of pure, elemental retribution. The other is a trickster, a being of cunning and madness, a spirit who leads men astray not into danger, but into the labyrinth of their own minds. They are separate, yet they are one. They are the jungle's immune system. Today, we journey into the emerald heart of the Amazon, a place where the line between the natural and the supernatural is not just thin. It does not exist. This is the tale of Mboitata, the Serpent of Fire, and Kirupara, the trickster god with backward feet. This is the story of what happens when humanity's greed awakens the ancient anger of the world's last, great, living heart. Welcome to Mythos Unveiled. Today, we seek to explain the guardians of the Amazon, not as simple monsters, but as the terrible, necessary, and symbiotic agents of nature's final, desperate war. Music fades completely, leaving only the narrator's voice for the continuous narrative. In the beginning, when the world was new, the great Amazon basin was a paradise of unimaginable scale, a world of water and green, of life so abundant and diverse that it seemed to be creation's very masterpiece. The gods who shaped this land were not like the tempestuous, human-like gods of Olympus or the grim, warring gods of Asgard. They were forces of nature, spirits of the trees, the rivers, the stones, and the sky. And their laws were simple: balance, respect, and the eternal, sacred cycle of life and death. For uncounted centuries, this balance held. The indigenous peoples who lived within the jungle understood the rules. They were a part of the system, not its masters. They took only what they needed. They hunted with respect. They fished with reverence. They honored the spirits of the plants they gathered. They knew that the jungle was not just a collection of trees and animals. They knew it was alive, and they knew it was watching. They told stories around their fires, stories not just for entertainment, but for survival. They spoke of the spirits that guarded the deep places. And two names were always spoken with a particular hushed reverence and fear. The first was Kirupara. He was the trickster, the lord of the hunt, the spirit of the forest floor. He was a being of profound contradiction. He often appeared as a small boy, his hair a shock of brilliant, fiery red, his skin the color of the rich, dark earth. But there were two things about him that were deeply, unnaturally wrong. His teeth were often green or blue, sharp as a jaguar's, and his feet were turned completely backwards, his heels facing forward and his toes pointing behind him. This was not a simple deformity. It was his greatest tool of deception. A hunter, thinking he was following the tracks of a small boy leading out of the jungle, would in fact be walking deeper and deeper into its heart, into Kirupara's domain. He was a living paradox, a walking misdirection. Kirupara was not inherently evil. He was the protector of the animals. If a hunter showed respect, if he hunted only out of need and honored the spirit of the animal he took, Kirupara might leave him in peace, or even, some say, lead him to good hunting grounds. But if a hunter was greedy, if he killed for sport, if he disrespected the forest and its creatures, then Kirupara would reveal his true, terrifying nature. He would not attack directly. That was not his way. He was a master of psychological warfare. He would begin with whispers, the sound of a voice with no source, calling the hunter's name from the trees. He would create illusions, making familiar paths twist and disappear, making the sun seem to rise in the west. He would imitate the sounds of animals and people, leading the hunter on a chase that went in circles, deeper and deeper into the maddening, monotonous green. His goal was not just to make a man lost. It was to make him lose his mind, to trap him in a labyrinth of his own confusion and fear until his sanity shattered, leaving him a babbling, weeping wreck, forever to wander the jungle, another restless ghost in the trickster's kingdom. The second guardian was a being of a different, more primal and more elemental power. His name was Mboy. In the ancient Tupi language, Mboy means serpent, and Tata means fire, the serpent of fire. The legends of its origin are varied. Some say it was born from a great flood that drowned the world, a serpent that survived by hiding in a cave and, in the darkness, its eyes grew so large and powerful that they became globes of pure fire. Others say it is the collected, vengeful spirits of all the animals that were killed by a great, ancient forest fire, now given a single terrible form. Whatever its origin, its nature was absolute. Mboy was the embodiment of the jungle's ultimate, destructive and purifying power. It often appeared as a great serpentine light, a ribbon of burning embers slithering through the trees at night. But its true form was that of a colossal anaconda, its scales shimmering like molten gold, its entire body wreathed in an aura of smokeless, magical flame, and its eyes two blazing, hypnotic suns. Mboy was the guardian not of the animals, but of the land itself, of the trees, the rivers, the very soil. It spent most of its time in a deep, magical slumber, coiled at the bottom of the great rivers, its spirit intertwined with the health of the forest. It was a dormant volcano of rage. As long as the balance was maintained, it slept. But if the jungle was grievously wounded, if its sacred trees were cut down indiscriminately, if its waters were poisoned, if, most heinously of all, a fire was deliberately set by men, then Mboy would awaken. And its awakening was an event of pure, elemental terror. It was the jungle's wrath given a body, a form, and an unquenchable, fiery hunger. These two beings, the trickster of the mind and the serpent of fire, were the jungle's twofold defense system. Kirupara was the first line of defense, the subtle warning, the psychological deterrent. Mboy was the final solution, the reset button, the absolute and fiery judgment. For centuries, their legends were enough. The fear they inspired kept the heart of the jungle safe. Until a new kind of man arrived. A man who did not understand the old rules. A man whose greed was a fire more potent than any Mboy could muster. A man who saw the jungle not as a living being, but as a resource to be plundered. The age of the explorers, the loggers, and the miners had begun, and the guardians were about to be very, very busy. Let us follow a group of these new men, the banderantes, the explorers and slavers who ventured deep into the Brazilian interior in search of gold and captives. They were hard men, their skin weathered by the sun, their hearts hardened by greed and a profound sense of their own superiority. They were armed with blades of steel, with fire, and with an arrogance that was, to the jungle, a more profound insult than any axe. They hacked their way into the deep green, their machetes singing through the air. They laughed at the warnings of the local tribes, dismissing the stories of Kirupara and Mboy as the primitive superstitions of a weak and conquered people. Their goal was a rumored deposit of gold, deep in a territory that had been declared taboo for generations. The jungle watched them. The silence deepened as they walked. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen, ancient awareness. The first sign came at dusk. As they made camp, they heard a rustle in the leaves, a sound too rhythmic, too deliberate to be the wind or a simple animal. One of the men, a younger one who still held a sliver of the old fears in his heart, cursed and gripped the handle of his arquebus. Then they saw him, just for a second, a flicker of brilliant, fiery red hair between the dark trees. A figure, perhaps a boy, perhaps a small man with wild, glowing green eyes and a grin that did not belong on any human face. And then he was gone. The leader of the expedition, a ruthless man named Duarte, took a step forward, his own blade drawn. He did not believe in spirits. He did not believe in games. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice steady and hard. There was no response, only silence, and then laughter. It was soft at first, almost playful, a child's giggle. Then it grew louder, closer. It seemed to circle them, bouncing between the trees, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. An impossible, disorienting sound. The younger man gripped Duarte's shoulder, his knuckles white. "Señor," he whispered, his voice trembling. "His feet, they were pointing the wrong way. We should turn back. It is the Curupira." Duarte scoffed, shaking him off. "It's just some damned native trying to scare us. Superstitious fools." He took another defiant step forward into the darkness. And the forest shifted. The path behind them, once clear, was suddenly gone. In its place stood a solid, impenetrable wall of ancient trees, their trunks thick and unyielding. The sun, which had been high in the sky moments before, had vanished, blotted out by a canopy of tangled branches that seemed to have sealed itself shut above them. The air grew colder, heavier, smelling of damp earth and something ancient and predatory. The men realized all at once that they were lost. Not just lost, but trapped. One of them, his nerve finally breaking, panicked. He let out a strangled cry and broke into a blind run. The others called out his name, but he did not stop. His footsteps faded into the distance. A moment later, a scream echoed through the jungle. It was not a scream of pain or even of fear. It was a scream of pure, gibbering madness, the sound of a mind being torn apart from the inside. Then, a final, terrible, chilling silence. The remaining hunters stood frozen, their hearts pounding like war drums in the sudden quiet. The jungle itself seemed to breathe around them, a slow, deep, and menacing rhythm. Duarte gritted his teeth, forcing a calm he did not feel into his voice. "Stay together," he commanded. "We find the path. We get out." They walked for hours or maybe minutes. Time had unraveled. The trees were endless, a monotonous, repeating pattern of green and brown. Every direction they took led them back to the same clearing, the same twisted ancient roots, the same whispering, mocking wind. Then, another laugh, this time right behind Duarte's ear. He spun around, his blade held high. "Enough of this," he bellowed. "Show yourself, demon." And he did. The figure of Curupira stepped forward from the shadows. He was a child and an ancient, terrible thing all at once. His grin was sharp as a shard of flint, his green eyes burning with an inhuman, cruel amusement. His skin seemed to glow faintly in the oppressive dim light, and his fiery red hair looked like embers against the suffocating darkness. The hunters did not move. They were trapped in his maze, in his game. "You hunt what is not yours to take," Curupira said, his voice the sound of rustling dry leaves. "You walk where you are not welcome." Duarte, his arrogance battling his rising terror, did not answer. He lifted his blade, preparing to charge. Curupira simply tilted his head, his grin widening. And then, with a simple, almost lazy flick of his wrist, the world collapsed. The jungle shifted again, more violently this time. The ground tilted beneath their feet. The trees warped and bent like melting wax. The hunters stumbled as the forest folded around them, closing in, twisting, trapping. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, like grasping black fingers, swallowing everything. Then, absolute profound darkness. When the sun rose the next morning, there was no trace of the men. No bodies, no weapons, no footprints. The jungle stood as it always had, unmoved, unforgiving. Only the distant, faint echo of a child's laughter lingered on the morning mist. Let us shift our gaze to another group, men of a different kind of greed. Not seekers of gold or slaves, but loggers. Men armed with fire and steel axes, sent by a distant, faceless corporation to clear a swathe of the forest for cattle grazing. They, too, were warned by the local tribes. They, too, laughed at the stories of the jungle's guardians. To them, the jungle was not a living being. It was a commodity, an obstacle on a balance sheet. The first spark was small, a single, carelessly tossed match into the dry undergrowth. A flicker of orange licking at the dead leaves. It should have died there, smothered by the damp, heavy breath of the jungle. But it did not. This was a fire born of disrespect, and the jungle itself seemed to recoil from it, allowing it to grow. The flames spread with an unnatural, hungry speed, crawling across the forest floor, feeding on the ancient, sacred trees as if the land itself had betrayed its own roots. The animals fled first. The monkeys shrieked their warnings from the canopy. The jaguars and tapirs slipped away like silent, terrified ghosts. The birds took to the skies in desperate, panicked flocks, their cries filling the smoke-choked air. The loggers laughed as they watched their work take hold. They had been warned by the elders, told of spirits that roamed these lands. But they saw only trees and wood and the promise of profit waiting to be cut and cleared. Myths, they believed, did not stand in the way of progress. They had cleared forests before. This was no different, or so they thought. As the flames danced higher, as the heart of the jungle began to burn, something stirred. Deep in the great, dark rivers, beneath the surface where the water runs cold, something awoke. Boy Tata opened its eyes. It had been waiting, curled in a timeless, magical slumber, its spirit intertwined with the health of the land, feeling the jungle as a man feels the steady beat of his own heart. The pain of the burning jungle was now its own pain. The silent screams of the ancient trees echoed through its fiery veins. The terror of the fleeing animals was a poison in its soul. The fire was not spreading on its own anymore. It had been summoned. A greater fire was coming to meet it. The air grew heavy. The wind carried not just the acrid smell of smoke, but something else. Presence. Pressure. The loggers felt it, though none would speak of it aloud. A shift in the atmosphere, an ancient awareness pressing in from all sides. The trees that were not yet burning no longer stood still. Their shadows deepened, thickened, seeming to close in. One man, wiping the sweat and soot from his brow, blinked against the heat, only to see the outline of something moving in the distance. At first, it was just a shimmer, a trick of the light, a ripple of heat rising from the burning earth. But then it coiled. It undulated. Glowing, fiery scales wove between the burning trees, a river of fire flowing against the current of the inferno. The men froze. It was impossible. A hallucination born from the smoke and the exhaustion. But it did not fade. It grew larger, brighter. The great serpent, Boy Tata, slithered forward, its body made of living, smokeless fire, its great head held high, its eyes burning with an ancient, implacable rage. One of the loggers, his nerves snapping, turned to run, but his foot never met the ground. The jungle itself, now an active participant in its own defense, seemed to swallow him whole. A root, thick as a man's arm, snaked out and pulled him down into the earth. The others watched in horror as something else emerged from the smoke, standing between them and their only escape route. It was Kurupara. His fiery red hair blazed like embers, his grin a wide, terrifying gash, his teeth sharp as carved bone. He walked with an unnatural, gliding ease, his backward feet leaving a trail of confusion in the ash. His green eyes glinted with a cruel, terrible amusement. The loggers were no longer the hunters. They were no longer the masters of this land. They were the hunted. Panic, absolute and primal, set in. The men scattered, bolting in different directions, their heavy boots crushing embers beneath them. But there was no escape. The jungle twisted around them with every step, paths shifting, burning branches stretching out to block their way. The more they ran, the deeper they plunged into the fiery, psychological trap. Then came the screams. One by one, they vanished into the smoke-filled night. Some were swallowed by Mboi Tata's blazing coils, their bodies consumed in a flash of white-hot, purifying fury. Their screams cut short, leaving not even ash behind. Others were claimed by Kurupara. They were dragged into the depths of the unburnt jungle, their cries of terror slowly turning into cries of madness, cut short by the sound of a child's laughter that did not belong in the realm of men. The leader of the logging crew, the one who had arrogantly struck the first match, ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. He fell to his knees, gasping for air, surrounded by the unyielding, whispering green. The fire, he noticed with a surge of hope, had vanished. The jungle around him was untouched, cool and damp. It had all been a trick, a nightmare, a hallucination. He barely had time to register the truth before he felt a hot, dry breath against the back of his neck. He turned and found himself staring into the two blazing, hypnotic suns that were the eyes of Mboi Tata, its great head lowered to his level. And standing beside it, leaning against its fiery coils as if it were a common pet, was Kurupara, his grin a final, terrible judgment. "The jungle does not forget," the trickster god whispered, his voice the rustling of leaves. "The jungle does not forgive." The jungle is silent once more. The great fire has died, leaving behind only patches of blackened, scorched earth, like scars on living flesh. The air is thick with the scent of wet ash, a bitter reminder of the destruction that almost was. But the land is not at peace. Something still lingers in the smoke, something watching, something hungry. The loggers are gone, swallowed, burned, driven into madness. Only one remains, the last survivor. He stumbles through the darkness, his breath ragged, his vision blurred by exhaustion and a terror so profound it has hollowed him out. He does not know how long he has been running. Hours, days. Time has lost its meaning in this green hell. The trees shift around him, their great roots tangling like bony fingers, grasping at his legs. The shadows stretch unnaturally, twisting in the corners of his sight. He is being hunted, not by a creature that wants his flesh, but by a consciousness that wants his sanity. A flicker of light, a will-o'-the-wisp, flashes through the trees, too fast, too deliberate to be a natural fire. He stops, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He turns in slow, jerky, terrified movements. The air is heavy, unnatural, pregnant with a malevolent silence. Then a whistle, faint, distant, a single, continuous, high-pitched note. It crawls down his spine, sending a spike of ice through his veins. He knows the stories. He had laughed at them. Now he remembers. Kurupara, the jungle trickster, the spirit of the hunt, the nightmare of those who take without respect. The elders spoke of him in whispers, warned of the laughter that turns men against themselves, the backward footsteps that lead nowhere, the tricks that do not end until the mind is broken. He presses a trembling hand over his mouth, muffling his ragged breath. But he knows it is useless. Another flash of light, brighter this time, closer. He turns and Boitada is there. The great serpent is colossal, its body a shimmering, undulating ribbon of molten embers, its eyes two pits of endless, ancient fire. It coils in the darkness, its presence suffocating, its gaze unyielding. The very ground beneath him trembles as the beast moves, slow and deliberate, its fiery scales casting flickering, dancing shadows across the trees. His mind, his very soul, screams for him to run, but there is nowhere left to go. The jungle is the trap, and he is at its center. The whistle grows louder, closer. Laughter follows, a child's gleeful, cruel laugh that comes from everywhere, from nowhere. The trees seem to close in, their leaves whispering his name. The jungle itself breathes around him. Then, a voice, soft, almost playful, right beside his ear. Did you think the land would not fight back? He spins wildly, searching for the source, but finds only the impenetrable darkness. The laughter twists around him, crawling under his skin, a maddening, impossible sound. His hands tremble, his breath comes in short, desperate, useless gasps. He cannot see a way out. He cannot remember where he came from. His thoughts are not his own anymore. Kurupara steps forward from behind a great tree, his flaming red hair casting an eerie, hellish glow over his sharp-toothed grin. His backward feet leave no trace as he moves. He tilts his head, watching the man's terror with a cold, detached curiosity. You took, Kurupara says, his voice the sound of dry, rustling leaves. Now you pay. The last logger falls to his knees, his body shaking uncontrollably. He wants to beg, to plead for mercy, but he knows with a final, soul-shattering certainty that there will be no mercy here. Boitada coils tighter, the heat from its body scorching the air, the sound of its fiery scales hissing against the damp earth. Kurupara leans closer, his green eyes glinting, and whispers the final, terrible word. Run. And so he does. He runs blindly, desperately, his screams tearing his own throat. But the jungle twists, warps, and folds in on itself. There is no escape. By the time the sun rises, there is nothing left of the men who came to burn the land. No bodies, no footprints, no trace. Only the jungle remains, breathing, watching, and waiting. The jungle is still. The flames have vanished. The smoke has dissolved into the thick, humid air. No sign remains of the men who sought to claim what was never theirs. Only the whispers of the trees tell their fate, rustling in a language older than men. But the villagers know. They wake to the profound silence, and they understand. They do not need to see the charred remains or the missing bodies to know that the jungle has passed its terrible judgment. The guardians have spoken, and they are not yet satisfied. Fear, cold and ancient, settles over the village like the morning mist. The elders gather in hushed, urgent voices, their faces dark with a deep unease. They have seen what happens when the jungle is angered, when the great guardians rise from their slumber. They have heard the stories, passed down for generations, the tales of those who defied the land and never returned. They know they must act. They have no choice. A path is cleared to the edge of the forest, where the great trees loom like silent, judgmental sentinels. The villagers bring what little they can offer. Tobacco, a sacred plant. Kachaka, a strong liquor. Arrows, fletched with the brightest feathers. Gourds filled with honey. These are gifts for the unseen, offerings for the ones who watch. A final, desperate hope for peace. The village shaman steps forward, his hands steady despite the immense weight of what he carries. He is the only one who dares cross the threshold into the jungle. He walks slowly, carefully, his breath even, his spirit open and respectful. He knows they are watching. He can feel it, a whisper in the leaves, a flicker of movement just beyond sight. He kneels at the foot of a great, ancient ceiba tree, placing the offerings gently on the damp earth. His voice is low and reverent, a chant passed down through his ancestors. "We come with respect," he intones. "We bring gifts. We acknowledge the harm that was done. We ask for mercy. We ask for peace." Silence. The trees do not answer. The air does not shift. The jungle holds its breath. Then a glow. Faint at first, a flickering like distant embers. The shaman does not look up. He keeps his eyes low, his posture humble and submissive. He knows what that fire is. Boitada is near. A breeze stirs, warm and tinged with the faint, clean scent of burning wood. The jungle is listening. A laugh, soft as the wind through the highest leaves, slithers through the air. It is not mocking, not cruel this time. It is curious. Kirupara is here too. The shaman closes his eyes, his heartbeat the only drum in the silent forest. He speaks again, his voice softer this time, a plea from the heart of his people. "We do not seek to harm. We wish to live in balance. Tell us what must be done." The jungle shifts. The presence of the two guardians lingers, a pressure like the weight of the night sky. Then, as suddenly as it came, it withdraws. The wind dies. The fire in the distance flickers out. The jungle breathes again. A slow, deep, and ancient sigh. The shaman waits. He does not move until he is certain he is alone. Only then does he rise, stepping back carefully, leaving the offerings untouched beneath the great tree. The villagers do not ask what he saw when he returns. They do not need to. They know. The jungle has accepted their gifts. For now. But there is no permanent truce with the spirits of the wild. There is only borrowed time, earned through respect and paid for with fear. The jungle is never truly silent. Even as the village sleeps, even as the stars cast their pale, cold light upon the great, green canopy, the forest breathes. Beneath the earth, the roots of the ancient trees twist and coil, whispering secrets of the past. The great, dark rivers murmur their endless, watery song, carrying the weight of memories older than time itself. The spirits are at rest, but they are never truly gone. Beyond the village, deep in the untouched, sacred heart of the Amazon, something stirs beneath the water's surface. Hidden beneath layers of shadow and flame, Boitada coils its immense, fiery body. It slumbers, but it does not dream. It does not need to. It listens. The land is quiet, the wounds of the last great transgression fading into the rich soil. But the great serpent knows it is only a matter of time. And high above, in the tangled, moonlit branches, Kirupara waits. His burning red hair flickers against the dark leaves. He watches. His feet, turned backward, leave no trace upon the forest floor, yet his presence lingers like a whisper carried on the wind. His laughter, soft and distant, drifts through the trees, weaving between the shadows. It is neither warm nor cruel. It simply is, promise or a warning. The villagers do not speak of what happened, not out loud. They go about their days as though the jungle does not press in from all sides, as though it is merely land and not something alive, watching. They leave their offerings at the edge of the forest, respectful, careful, never daring to take more than what is needed. But outsiders do not know the rules. A traveler arrives, a foreigner, a botanist, a man of science, unaware of the unseen eyes watching him from the trees. He comes with curiosity, not malice. But the jungle does not care for intent, cares only for balance. And already the spirits have taken notice. He steps past the tree line, drawn by the allure of the unknown, a rare orchid he wishes to document. The village elder had warned him, his words simple and heavy. Stay on the path. The old man did not elaborate, did not explain the profound weight behind his words. He did not need to. The traveler nodded, polite and dismissive, and walked on. The forest closes around him. At first, the change is subtle. The light dims, though the sky above is still clear. The air grows heavier, thick like honey, pressing against his skin. The trees seem taller now, their trunks stretching endlessly upward, their roots twisting in strange, unnatural and menacing patterns. Then, the sound shifts. The constant, vibrant hum of insects fades. The rustling of leaves ceases. Even the wind holds its breath. The jungle listens. He presses forward, unnerved but unwilling to turn back. He is a man of science, of logic. He tells himself it is just a forest, just trees and plants and creatures following their own predictable rhythm. Then the first whisper, a breath of sound, barely audible, threading through the profound stillness. He stops, his heart pounding. A trick of the wind. It must be. Then the second whisper, closer. The hairs on his arms rise. He swallows, forcing a laugh. His own voice feels too loud, an intrusion in this sacred silence. Then the third whisper right beside his ear. His breath catches in his throat. He turns sharply, but there is nothing. Only the trees, stretching endlessly, their shadows deeper than before. Then the whistle, soft, constant, unnatural. His stomach drops. The stories he had dismissed as folklore flood his mind all at once. The tales of men who entered the jungle and never returned. Of those who followed paths that did not lead where they should. He is no longer alone. The laughter comes next. Not a single voice, but many, light, almost playful, curling around him like unseen vines. The trees shift. The path behind him is gone. His breath quickens. He turns in place, searching for an exit, for anything familiar. But the jungle is different now. It is a maze, and he is its only occupant. Kirupara has taken notice. The traveler stumbles forward, trying to retrace his steps, but every direction leads nowhere. The jungle has changed. The trees are endless. The shadows are wrong. Then he sees a movement, a flicker of fire in the distance. Not a torch, not the sun. Something else. Something alive. The air shimmers with an impossible heat. The flames slither through the darkness, their glow forming the shape of something enormous. Boitada. The traveler runs. His pulse hammers against his ribs, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. The jungle twists with every step, a living, breathing maze without an exit. The laughter follows him. The whistle never stops. Then the ground tilts beneath him. He falls, his hands clawing at the damp earth, his lungs burning. The last thing he sees is a pair of glowing green eyes watching him from the dark, and a flash of fiery red hair. The guardians are patient. They have all the time in the world. The oldest laws are not written in stone, but in the very fabric of the earth itself. And the most ancient guardians do not sleep. They merely wait. Thank you for journeying with us into the heart of the Amazon. If this unveiling of the jungle's terrible protectors has captivated your imagination, show your support by liking this video, subscribing to Mythos Unveiled, and hitting the notification bell so you never miss another journey into the world's most secret and powerful legends. What other spirits of nature do you believe are still standing guard over the wild places of our world? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, walk with respect, for you never know what is watching from between the trees.